I have often referred to women as gunslingers. And it's like, there's room in this town for one of us, and it's gonna be me. And they don't support each other. They don't elevate each other. Most mentors for the females I know are men. I very rarely see women mentoring other women, giving them opportunities, because there is a threat there that I have always witnessed. And guys are, notoriously bros before hoes. Women are the exact opposite. I don't have enough little catchphrase to invert that sentiment,
Right.
but you get the point. I'm sorry, Doc. I didn't mean to jump in.
It's
but
all right.
No, that's
Jillian,
super. That's the point. That's the point.
It's the point. You were very honestly describing a motivational system. And that motivational system is founded on a reproductive strategy. And there it is. You just described it. And I've always said women need to own that and then figure out how to fight against it so they can be more collaborative and supportive of other women. But it's very hard for them. It's very hard.
Well, it's kind of funny when people are always like, what are they? The future is female, or just some of these like sort of phrases that don't really.
I was that guy. That guy.
But but the truth is, like, if women, let's say the big, G4 countries, or you took the top 10 most important countries, if they all had female prime ministers or presidents, the implication coming from those people is that we would have a much safer, more peaceful world. And I don't think there's any evidence to believe that, actually.
All right, today I get to kick things off, which I'm not really sure what that means, because although I'm an actual friend, I'm a newcomer to the show, certainly as somebody introing it. Dave, do you need to say anything before I launch into my stuff?
No, I felt very good about that. You are a broadcasting professional, star of television and the internet. You just started speaking at the appropriate time, and, I guess you could mention our names. Or,
okay, well, let me introduce my actual friends. Dave Rubin, just back from the great triumphant return from Australia, where he was talking to us about the enormity of that country. He'll tell us more about it. And of course, Jillian Michaels is here with us as well. And Sage will be joining us in mere moments. We're actual friends. And I've been appointed to start things off today. And some things have been entering my consciousness that I wanted to share with you guys. And it is a topic that I'm looking for every opportunity to apologize these days. Every opportunity I have, I just think, oh, I got that wrong. Let me apologize. And this is one of those topics because early in the 90s, I began championing the female brain. I was saying early and often that big corpus callosum and the attunement to the environment and people is an advantage that we should be taking it. We should be celebrating, and we need women in professions, and we need women in politics, and we need women everywhere. And this is going to be a really good thing. Turns out that may not be, strictly speaking, all true. like anything.
Sorry, Jillian. No offense.
And we're talking about not women so much as the feminine, okay? And you're going to start hearing terms like gynofascism, which is the extreme thinking about this. I do not adhere to that. Or that the feminine per se has a strategy associated with it that is affecting us in ways that may not be immediately evident. Let me give you the evidence presented by one Dr. Danny Sulikowski, okay, who I'm going to interview in a couple of weeks. She's an evolutionary biologist. And I'm a biologist by training. And so in biology, what you always do is you look at every question you're asking, why did this happen? You look at the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. Why did this evolve? What evolutionary advantage did this cause? And she has a very elaborate theory with lots of evidence that suggests that so much of the progressive movement is actually a strategy, a reproductive strategy by elite women. In other words, the goal, because as a female, you can't go raid a village and rape lots of women. You can't spend your seed everywhere. You have to invest in one pregnancy at a time. So much like Cleopatra. What's that?
I regularly engage in those activities. But
okay, you spread your seed, but should it right?
I'm sorry. Okay, so we cannot rape and pillage and plunder. So we're destroying society in other ways.
The reproductive investment is different. And so Cleopatra could have had sex with many men as she wanted, but instead she invested in high value men. and people that she could get access to, like Mark Antony and Julius Caesar, and that was her reproductive strategy. Well, it turns out that's something that elite women do throughout history, anthropologically. And we're going through a time when part of that strategy is to discourage other women from reproducing. You should have an abortion. I don't necessarily agree on abortion, but you should have an abortion. You should maybe transition. My kids aren't going to I'm not going to but you should transition. Men are toxic. Well, my husband's an exception. You should delay childbearing. You should not get married. All these things, according to Dr. Sulakowski, are a strategy to reduce access to reproductive opportunities so the elite female can win out in the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, your thoughts.
Wow, there's a lot here, but Jillian, I feel that I must allow the females to speak here first. You know,
I don't identify with any of it. I don't know where I would fall here because I'm not seeking, the Julius Caesar of the moment. I would seek to be the Julius Caesar of the moment. And I have not traditionally identified with women. I don't mean like identification with regard to gender. I don't identify with the way they think. I relate far more to men. My friends are predominantly men. So I'm probably the last person. We need Sage for this one in a really big way. Because but I think the point you're making is exceptionally intriguing. I would argue there's so much virtue signaling there, though. It's like the position of the empathetic, of the moral high ground, is to argue for gender affirming care because you're so tolerant and accepting, for abortion because your body, your choice. That would have been the argument I would have made 5 minutes ago. But
Yeah.
this is very interesting. I need to think about it.
It's just interesting from the standpoint of everything biologically in mammalian systems has an evolutionary purpose to it, even though it may be hidden from us. It's a motivational system. That's all. It's not a philosophical system. It's not a cognitive system. It's a motivational system that works throughout human history. And she presents, Dr. Sulakowski, ample evidence for how civilizations go through these cycles over and over and over again. But what I like, Jillian, about your response is this is exactly what I think we need to think about. We're not saying all women. We're not saying it's only the reproductive strategy. In fact, your point about wanting to be Julius Caesar is exactly the right response, which is you can be Julius Caesar. These mechanisms can be operating in behind the scenes in our motivational systems.
Can I say one more thing before we pass to Dave? You were talking about these messages of like, you have an abortion, I'm not going to, so on and so forth. I have seen that so much with body positivity.
That's the other thing.
With fitness experts. It's like,
Well,
I'm going to be this big and arguably anorexic, but you can be 350 pounds. And I have...
Jillian, guess what happens when you're 350 pounds?
You
don't reproduce.
Doc,
it's part of the strategy.
Here.
So there's so much here. I don't know if you saw, Drew, as you were laying this out, I was scribbling like crazy because I was having so many thoughts. So first off, three names popped into my head. Brett Weinstein as an evolutionary biologist, which you mentioned that's what this doctor is. And he talks a bunch about this type of thing. And I like that you called it, I think you said, not behavioral, you used another term, but the idea that that it's sort of just like built in some sense.
Yes. Evolve. Yeah. It doesn't mean we have to be that way. We're not destined to be this way. But if we're not thinking about it, our motivational systems kick in, and we will.
Right, our motivational system. That's what you said. For the record, guys, I am extremely jet lagged. So if I can get through this, it'll be a miracle. We're going to see if my motivational system is going to push me through.
Hang on, as long as we're talking about our medical problems, look at my cancer. I got moved there. So point that. People Jillian, what's wrong with your face? It'll be better in time.
Everyone's going to think Drew had half his facelift because, he does live in Los Angeles, but no, it was cancer. Jillian, do you have any medical issues or jet lag or anything like that?
Nothing that is temporary, chronic, ongoing, sure, but we'd be here all day.
All right.
So.
Well, as a female, you're in top form right now. Well, I was thinking about Brett partly because this is something that he would point out, that sometimes you don't even know exactly how you're acting. There's something deeper that's pushing you towards something. As a behavioral psychologist, he talks about that. Then I was thinking about Gad Saad, who, of course, you guys both know.
Yeah.
He's a consumer behavioral
I'm going to
psychologist.
send Gad this interview right now. because he is the right person to review this and get some ideas about it.
Right, because he always talks about how we're always making choices throughout the day that we think we're a certain way, and actually our choices probably say more about us than what we think about us. And that's sort of why the algorithms are so dangerous, because we all think we know we're a certain way, but when they look at our behaviors, it's like why everyone's always like, well, why don't they have a channel with just good news? And it's like, because actually nobody would click it. Something like that. And then I was thinking about Jordan Peterson, of course, who's a clinical psychologist, and he's been talking about this in the broad sense for years, because his thing has been, well, men and women are fundamentally different. We're allowed to talk about it. Men generally care more about things, and women care more about people. That's why men generally maybe go more towards engineering and women go more towards nursing. And that reminded me of, there was a study in Sweden, you Drew, you may have heard of this one, about 10 years ago, where Sweden, Jillian, you will love this. Sweden did everything right as it came to meritocracy and equality of the sexes and all of those things. No one was walking around Sweden going, man, women can't do whatever they want and get childcare and have every opportunity and blah, blah, blah. And what happened as they did that over the years was the data came out, and then they looked. This is about 5 years ago. There was a giant government study. They looked at it and they were like, wait a minute, men are still way more into engineering, and we still have a huge disproportionate amount into women into nursing. So then the social justice warriors magically appeared and wanted to rejigger their whole society. So the point being that there are fundamental things when you remove all barriers that still separate men and women. Obviously, there's always outliers.
Not all men, not all women. Everyone has to point out every time.
Right.
But yeah, the more gender equal, the more they diversify into gender, what do you call them?
Conforming, sort of. Or gender expecting, or whatever it might be, which is so interesting. You even the playing field, and then they still do this.
No, they do it more. They do it more the more equal.
Right. It's actually incredible. And then the people who want to re-engineer society actually want to put in, processes in place to make people go against their biology. But as it pertains to this study specifically, I mean, it's super, super interesting. Another thing I was thinking was, you see a lot of these, I don't want to throw any specific people under the bus, but there's a lot of 50 plus female single comics. I guess I can name a few. Sarah Silverman, the blonde, what's her name? The drunk blonde, Chelsea Handler, thank you. Yeah, man, my brain is not working right now. But there's a lot of these women that are 50-something that went all in on their career. And they end up without kids, without families, unmarried, and hugely, hugely angry. And then they try to sell that life to younger women. And it's like, there might be something there, as opposed to the woman who did it right and then wants to sell something bad, which is a little more, Dave, I think, in line.
To that point,
I said a lot of things at once there.
I shared a podium once with a woman, probably 20 years ago, with the Independent Women's Forum. And this woman set out to write a book about what makes the most successful women in America. What do they share in common? So she interviewed Diane Sawyer and Oprah. This is like 15, 20 years ago. And all these wonderfully successful women whose names we all know. And she said, I could not find one common thread amongst them except one thing.
No kids.
None of them had children, and they were all pissed.
Ooh.
And they're pissed because
Martha Stewart.
They were told they could do it when they were ready, whenever they want to. And then the time came and the window had closed and they were pissed.
That's so interesting. It's unquestionably a trade-off. You just can't run the same race when you have kids. And it's not that it's all or nothing with regard to giving your kids everything and being the ultimate martyr, but they do have to come first because they can't take care of themselves. And it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. Some of us think is worth making, and some of us don't.
And should be supportive of that. But I think we should, as a society, be figuring out a way to support women to do things in stages.
You're
so
right,
they can have the big career after the childbearing is sort of done, and that's but if we don't admit that children need mothers, well, then we have a problem.
Jillian, what do you think about the push to have every woman with a giant career? Again, removing some of the outliers, of course.
Right.
But like if I right now, because we have young kids, so we meet a lot of young couples like at the park or something like that. Yeah. And a lot of times when we meet the wives who are stay-at-home wives, they seem by far the happiest and most complete. And that's, of course, that's not a judgment call on anyone else. And by the way, they share a million frustrations that young parents have, that David has as a young father who's the primary caregiver. And that's obviously an outlier thing too. But this push to make every woman think about her career first does seem kind of dangerous.
My takeaway would be the following: women are different. To give Chelsea Handler a little bit of credit, I really don't think she wants to be a mom. You guys,
No,
I think people who don't want to be moms maybe shouldn't be, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that probably shouldn't be parents and end up becoming parents, and it's like this
For
this
sure.
gig wasn't for you. So I respect her choice there. I'll tell you that Maria Shriver once said, "You can have it all, but not at the same time." I have worked tirelessly to try to prove her wrong, and here's what I have come up with. You can have it all, you're just kind of shitty at it. And that is you don't quite reach the level of success. You aren't quite the perfect mom at every game. And it really becomes a continuum of super crappy mom, incredible mom. Like, where do you fall on this continuum?
Yeah.
That's my personal journey with it. But, I don't know, guys. I mean, all women are different. Then you look at someone like Megyn Kelly, who's exceptionally successful and a great mom, and her for that. I don't know.
No, I know. It's funny. You guys have probably been to her house or met maybe her kids or husband. But when I was there last time, it was the first time actually that I had met Doug, and I was like, wow, they really seem to love each other, which didn't surprise me. But you see couples that are together and supposed to be together. I was like, that was refreshing. And then I met a couple of the kids, and I was like, wow, these were pretty impressive kids. And she's obviously a great broadcaster, and she looks better than probably she's ever looked in her adult life. So but it is that constant battle. But Drew, the crux of the paper really is this thing about trying to keep other people down more than balancing it all right?
Exactly.
So that's really more the interesting part here.
Yeah.
Is that like a female thing in and of itself? I guess that's like Mean Girl. I suppose that's like Mean Girls.
Oh yeah, no. Okay, there's just one thing, and then I'm gonna pass it off. I'm sorry, but I have often referred to women as gunslingers. And it's like there's room in this town for one of us, and it's gonna be me. And they don't support each other. They don't elevate each other. Most mentors for the females I know are men. I very rarely see women mentoring other women, giving them opportunities, because there is a threat there that I have always witnessed. And guys are, notoriously bros before hoes. Women are the exact opposite. I don't have enough little catchphrase to invert that sentiment,
Right.
but you get the point. I'm sorry, Doc. I didn't mean to jump in.
It's
but
all right.
No, that's
Jillian,
super. That's the point. That's the
in my
point.
It's the
side for
point.
decades.
You were very honestly describing a motivational system. And that motivational system is founded on a reproductive strategy. And there it is. You just described it. And I've always said women need to own that and then figure out how to fight against it so they can be more collaborative and supportive of other women. But it's very hard for them. It's very hard.
Well, it's kind of funny when people are always like, what are they? The future is female, or just some of these like sort of phrases that don't really.
I was that guy. That guy.
But the truth is, like, if women, let's say the big, G4 countries, or you took the top 10 most important countries, if they all had female prime ministers or presidents, the implication coming from those people is that we would have a much safer, more peaceful world. And I don't think there's any evidence to believe that, actually.
I don't think so either.
Definitely not by what Jillian just told us.
Meloni looks pretty intense. I respect her. I'm just saying she's, she may as well be a female version of Trump, as far as I can tell, although he's a pacifist. But I don't see that either. I don't see that at all. Not at all. Women wage war in other ways, like you've described, Dr. Drew, without question.
But women can also have masculine traits and characteristics. Right. These are not unique. Women can't have this and men have to have that. It's not like that at all. It's just these adaptive motivational systems are in us to a more or less intense extent, and they divide around X and Y chromosomes.
That's very interesting.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to leave my. That's all I'm going to talk about today.
Dave, all right, Jillian, you're up.
Alert enough to handle this, or am I jumping in right now? What's going on?
No, you're up, Jillian. I'm going at the end if my head is still my head's not on the table.
Well, I did want to ask you how the tour
Yeah.
was. I mean, it looks incredible.
It was amazing. I mean, the shows were great. I love meeting people, and it's just incredible, like validating in some way that I can go across the world. I mean, with that crazy flight and have all these people show up and all the meet and greets and all that, and it's such an affirming piece of what I do, which is nice. We all need that in some way, and obviously we all get that in crazy ways. But just when you see that, like, that, I can talk about this stuff. My show is talking about the stuff we always talk about. It's all mostly American politics and culture, and that all the way across the world, they really care about that.
Yes, they do.
And that was the thing that I couldn't believe. We did live Rubin reports. So every day we wrote a new show when we did our theater shows. So every day the show was different. And a couple times I was like, do you guys even care about this? Talking about Mom Dami or this or that. And they'd be going crazy, absolutely going crazy. So it was really wonderful. Australia, it's a super interesting country because it's its own continent. It's an island. It's the same size basically as the United States. So imagine if the United States was just in an ocean somewhere that no one's really sure where it is, but it's sort of a gateway to China in some sense. Yet it is America's. They speak English and their spirit is kind of American. So that's kind of interesting. And they only have 27 million people. We have 350 million people. So 27 million people in a ridiculously large landmass. And they're definitely going through their own kind of like, what are we? They've had a lot of the leftist nonsense about the indigenous people there and should Australia even exist. And then they've imported a lot of people. We went to Melbourne, which it's Melbourne, not Melbourne, and they made sure to tell me that many times. We went to, and it was really interesting to be there because I've traveled the world just like you guys. I've never been to a city that my entire team, we were there for a couple of days, everyone was saying it felt like the middle child. Like you couldn't get a sense of what this city is. We were like, have we met an Australian here? There's huge amounts of Asian people. And then there's a huge amount of Arabs. And not that many, what you would say are just native, Crocodile Dundee wasn't wandering around there. And you just couldn't get a feeling of what the city was. Sydney was very different. Then you feel like you're in kind of a huge metropolitan city and it's Australia again. Then we went to the Gold Coast where there's all the beautiful surfers and all that. So that was awesome. And we finished up in Brisbane, which is actually kind of looks like Miami in a way. So anyway, it was wonderful. But they definitely have concern around immigration and just the idea that you could be on this island somewhere and that they're worried about losing their country is a really interesting thing. But it was great.
The thing that jumped out at me when I was in Sydney that one thing you didn't mention that I wonder if you caught your attention as well is Queen Victoria is all over the place in Sydney, and the word Commonwealth. We're the British Commonwealth. I thought, wow, you really identify as part of Great Britain. It's quite wild.
Well, it's interesting. So that feels like it's kind of fraying in a weird way. They can't tell. Do they identify with that history? Obviously then the way the country was founded in the first place, basically as a slave colony. Then they have the struggles with the Aboriginals. Then you have all these new people that have come in. And one thing that clearly had really affected them in the last 2 years was, remember on October 8th, 2023, when a bunch of Islamists, but they are Australian, were chanting outside the Sydney Opera House, "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews." Everyone was asking me about that because it was one of the rare times that Australia made news outside of its borders. We had like running jokes like, the only things people kept saying to me, well, what do Americans think about Australia? And I was like, well, actually, I don't think there's one American wandering around like, I don't like Australia. Like you say Australia, like what does everyone thinks the same? You think surfing, basically, Crocodile Dundee. We think about Bluey because we have little kids, and Mad Max. Like there's not much more to it than that. But they definitely now have this identity crisis. It was really weird to see.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh. All right. Well,
and it's a long flight. That's the key to the whole
hours.
Record. Oh man, well, it's going is worse from Florida. So you fly basically, it's like 5.5 to San Francisco. Then we had like a 5-hour layover there. Then it's a 15-hour and 1 minute. Then they were really stressing that 1 minute to where'd we fly into? We flew into Melbourne. And so that's, and then you have a 15-hour time jump. So basically we left Miami at like 2 p.m. on Tuesday, and we arrived Thursday morning, which is it's just all mind warping,
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great.
Steve.
I'm
Well,
okay.
Welcome
okay.
back.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're doing great. Maybe, hopefully the doc can give you some special jet lag tips when this is all said and done. I'll try to be quick here then, because I'm sure you're exhausted. First one, and Dr. Drew, please jump in and help/correct me if I get this one wrong, is the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, just filed a major lawsuit against Johnson Johnson and Kenvue. So Kenvue is, I guess, a spin-off company. It's its own company, but it split off from Johnson Johnson to manage their consumer health products like Tylenol, for example. And essentially, he accused Kenvue and Johnson of deceptively marketing Tylenol as safe for pregnant women. So we're going to pull up the lawsuit right here. But the long story short is that the state of Texas claims the companies were aware of studies showing a link. This is key. I'm going to ask Dr. Drew to lean into something that's causal and something that's correlated in just a minute. Studies that show a link between prenatal acetaminophen use, which is the key ingredient in Tylenol, and higher rates of autism and ADHD, and they didn't warn moms. So they're seeking penalties, injunctions, and they're accusing J&J of spinning off Kenvue to hide this issue and try to mitigate liabilities that J&J would incur. And the one thing I also want to throw out there is that Dr. McCary, who's now head of the FDA, has said that there were 27 studies that found an association of prenatal use with acetaminophen. And then, in fact, it was the dean of Harvard School of Public Health. He's the one, or she, forgive me, I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman, who found a casual relationship between ADHD, autism, and acetaminophen use. So, Doc, I'm handing it off to you now. This is pro.
You got it, and I'm just going to reinforce what you said. Is what has been uncovered is what's called a strong signal. Like something worthy of further study keeps coming up, both intrauterine exposure to acetaminophen and even early childhood exposure. I'm advising my son to be careful. I mean, why do you put anything in a child or a pregnant woman is my constant refrain. But okay, I'll remind people also that acetaminophen, 12 tablets will kill you. In 2 days, your liver will completely shut down if you take them all at once. It's one of the most gruesome ways to commit suicide. And I've dealt with that a lot over the years. And people treat all chemicals as though they're going to make life better. No, chemicals, pharmaceuticals are there to either eliminate suffering, disabling conditions, or life-threatening conditions. That's it. Anything else should be done with the utmost caution. Anything. I was raised by an old family practitioner. My dad first time I took an antibiotic, I was 15. I remember the day, and he was like, "All right, here we go. Pediatrician wants you to take this." I think it's ridiculous. The risk reward world has gone away, and in COVID, it was never more bleak. When risk was not considered, Francis Collins said it out loud. We didn't consider any consequence of the actions we were taking. And that is disgusting and is the opposite of what medicine is designed to do. So there's a strong signal. It may be causational, maybe causing trouble, or it may be associated with something else for which you're taking the Tylenol, and they have to sort these things out. But there's a signal there, and in the meantime, people should be very cautious, and the government and the NIH should be raising our awareness about this so you can make your own choices and talk to your doctors about it. If they feel for some reason it's strongly needed, then of course do it, because fever has a certain amount of risk in pregnant women as well, and same thing in children. But it's only when the risk is worth the reward.
So obviously I'm not an expert in this the way Drew is, so I can talk about it from a media perspective, and then I'll mention one personal thing as it relates to parenting. On the media side, I'll have my guys look for it and we can throw it in post, but isn't there a tweet from Tylenol itself?
Yes.
About, what is it? Is it 2019 or maybe even 17?
They were concerned. They were trying to raise awareness. And Jillian's point, look, I believe companies are rational actors, right? They're not irrational and they're not evil. They have a fiduciary responsibility to optimize profits. That's it. And to limit liabilities. So I think Jillian is right. That's probably why they spun off that company rationally, to limit liability to the big daddy.
Right. I agree. And I think that's an important thing to say, that a lot of people, and because we've been so lied to for so long, people suddenly think that every institution is inherently evil or something like that. I think it's way more usually motivated by profit, with a little bit, again, hedging against some of the other stuff. We have one tweet here, and this is from March 7th, 2017. And this is the official Tylenol account. They said, "We actually don't recommend using any of our products while pregnant. Thank you for taking your time, the time to voice your concerns today." So clearly there was something here, and they knew that women were doing this and it wasn't the best thing. So that's one thing that's interesting, because it's also particularly interesting in that tweet, nobody was talking about that for the last, 8 years, basically, until a few weeks ago when
Right.
Bobby Kennedy had that press conference with Donald Trump. That's one part. And then the only other part that I can, just to humanize it a little bit when it comes to medicine related to what you said, Dr. Drew, is that, when our kids have been sick so far, we do everything possible not to go
Sure.
to drugs.
Of
We
course.
really do. Like we do everything possible to avoid having to do that. And a couple times, and I can count it on probably one hand, obviously they've been sick many times, they're kids, it just happens, where we've maybe 5 times where we've actually had to go to some kind of drug. And fortunately, we have a functional doctor for them that agrees with that methodology. And there's usually other ways that you can help get temperature down or that kind of thing. But so anyway, all that to say, none of this really surprises me. I think we're in an era where we're going to learn a lot more about the drug companies that have given us things and the institutions that told us to take things and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and my profession, which has been duplicitous in all this and sort of brainwashed by it. And just two quick things. Cuba has very low access to Tylenol and very low autism rates. So, I wonder if that could be something there. Just again, association. I don't know. The other thing is, pregnant women should be taking nothing. I've said that forever. They should not. The DNA is open during development, and this is an extremely delicate biological process and could be set off so easily. There is one exception to that, the American College of Physicians. This is the only medicine I know of that women are encouraged to stay on during pregnancy. And I mean the only one. And it was literally in the board review for rheumatology I was taking about 5 years ago. They said for the women with lupus, absolutely, it's completely benign. They should absolutely continue on this one drug, hydroxychloroquine, because it is so benign and so inert. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. That's bananas. Okay. The one that, of course, everybody was kicked off the internet for talking about during COVID, along with ivermectin.
By people who just learned how to pronounce the word.
Wow.
The day before.
Horse paste.
Jeez. Okay. So final thought on this one. Dave, you said profit driven. I would say money is the root of all evil. Profit over people. You might engage in these behaviors because you're driven by profit, but that ends up being an evil outcome. The reality is, if your doctor says take it because you have a super high fever, I don't know, that's a Dr. Drew question. But when you hide that information or you don't give women the right to make that choice, that's darkness.
You know what, Jillian? Jillian, there's something, as usual, I'm just thinking about how I'm going to make you Julius Caesar. I'm ruminating about but there's profound profundity in that statement you just made, which is that people have that evil is done in the name of good. Almost all.
The road to hell.
That is true of businesses, and that's true of governments, and it's true of social group, and it comes from the ground up oftentimes. But beware doing good. It is how social evil gets transmitted.
I would say, for the record, I actually never say that the phrase money is the root of all evil, because I know plenty of poor people. I know plenty of super rich people. I know everyone in between. And what I found is, generally speaking, money just makes you more of who you are. So
Correct.
if you're generally a generous, fun person and blah blah blah, then you like to share that money and have people experience things with you and all those things. And then if you're kind of just like a curmudgeon-y, cheap, whatever you are, that way too. So I usually think it's something else. There's some other character thing that's kind of driving that, but I get why people say it, obviously.
With corporations,
it can get done inadvertently. Evil can happen.
I mean, if that's your bottom line is profit, inherently it's over people, and then that begets behaviors and actions that are dark, period. So I get that you're saying, listen, the guy working at Johnson Johnson who did X, Y, or Z, or the person working at PepsiCo who does X, Y, and Z to pay the bills and this and that, and to meet the, whatever benchmarks they need to hit for Wall Street to be happy and the stock not to tank. Sure, we can make all those excuses, but at the end of the day, I just think it's sociopathic. We've all had opportunities to make these decisions. I know I have. There's a former Biggest Loser trainer on the homepage for Ozempic right now. Bob Harper took a ton of money from GlaxoSmithKline. It's a choice. It really is. It's a choice whether you want to perpetuate this. And I think there's darkness in that I don't want to excuse. There's a level of personal accountability when you contribute to the problem. I know that I've lost a lot of money not doing that. So F those people who cashed in that don't get a pass.
It's probably also a little bit about systems work in general, right? So if you're at a giant corporation, and, even think about how the government works, why nobody ever gets fired for anything, and all the people, look at post-COVID, nobody got fired for anything. It's sort of like, when you hear the Francis Foster quote that you mentioned there, or all of the nonsense that Fauci was saying, and the buck is always being passed to everybody. So then, they just basically imagine up 6 feet social distancing from this one paper from a year ago, and then everyone kind of gets on board. And it's not necessarily that was all like profit driven in that they're working for the government, but it's in some sense, it's like ego driven. Like everyone's just like, oh, we can close restaurants for people. Let's go ahead and see what happens. That woman, Drew, I'm sure you remember. Oh, no, Jillian, were you in LA during COVID also?
Oh, it's why I moved out.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were. Well, do you remember that woman? That woman, Sheila Cool was her name, but it was spelled not COOL, doesn't matter. But she was the one who, like a year and a half into COVID, they had the meeting of 5 city managers. She was the deciding vote for a 3-2 to close down restaurants again, but the vote wasn't going to kick in. It wasn't going to kick in for 24 hours. So she votes to close down all the restaurants again. And then she goes to her favorite restaurant, I think in Malibu, if I'm not mistaken, her favorite Italian restaurant. And it's like that sort of thing. It wasn't profit driven for her, but it's power driven in a weird way. Like, how can we just manipulate people? And then people wonder how the Nazis appeared and how could the Nazis do so many bad things? Yeah,
all right.
Human nature.
Speaking of California, I've got a great clip for you. Here is Arnold Schwarzenegger talking to Jake Tapper on why Californians need to vote no on Prop 50. Take a look.
As you acknowledged, this all started because of redistricting in Texas, and this was Trump pushing Republican-controlled states to throw out their current congressional maps so as to cook the books, so that it is less likely for Democrats to retake control of the House during the next year midterms. I mean, is it fair to argue that do you believe that the Republican Party is starting this?
No, Jake. There has been gerrymandering going on for 200 years. There is such extreme gerrymandering going on that in a state like Massachusetts, it has like 40% of the people voting for Trump, they have 0 representatives. The Republican Party has 0 representatives sent to the House. Think about that. In New Mexico, if 45% of the people voted for Trump and voted Republican, and 0 is sent to the House, 0 representative from the Republican Party. So there's gerrymandering, crazy gerrymandering going on all over the country. And we wanted to try to stop it in California, and we did stop it in California, and we went around the country. So I think this whole thing about finger pointing and saying they did it, so therefore we should doing it, that's not really the way to go. The one party should outperform the other party. It should be performance. And when it comes to midterm elections, as you know, always the party that is not in the White House usually wins by 20, 25, 30 seats. So what does 5 seats matter in the first place in Texas? It is crazy. We should outperform them. That is where the action is.
First of all, hang on, Jillian. I just love that he does it in Gold's Gem. I just love it. I love him so much.
He's on brand. He's on brand.
I know. I didn't realize how good we had it when he was in charge. A few other things to know. I got to be honest. I think gerrymandering is gross across the board. And I like the fact that he calls out both sides. Apparently, he's trying to get the federal government to ban this, which would be awesome because it disenfranchises everybody. Period. At least in my opinion. But some things to know about Prop 50 that I thought were interesting. Gavin Newsom is spending $129 million to try to push this through, $10 million of which came from George Soros, which is terrifying. I listened to Steve Hilton express this. If this passes, Prop 50, it will take 193,000 votes to elect a Democrat to Congress in California. It will take 1.5 million votes to elect a Republican to Congress in California. And what's bananas is that you see Obama and AOC, and it's like, oh, we've got to do this to protect democracy. I'm like, this is the exact opposite of protecting democracy. It's like these guys always race to the worst behavior. Instead of saying, how do we block this at a federal level? This is a problem. It's like, oh, I'm gonna see your gerrymandering in Texas and triple down. It's just, it grosses me out, guys. I hate it.
There's a bunch of things here. First off, it's already been pointed out, but yes, both sides do it. And if you look at some of the maps that they show you of how districts are made, they're completely insane. The shapes make absolutely no sense. You'll see like a bizarro squiggle line in the middle of the state that just makes no geographic sense and it makes population sense for the people that want it that way. But first off, yes, both sides do it. That's number one. Number two, I have to say, I'm very glad to see Arnold back out there and making some sense because I'm a child of the 80s. Total Recall is probably my favorite movie of all time. Predator, the list obviously Terminator and T2, and it goes on and on.
Yeah.
However, I was really pissed at him during COVID because, he had that one line, if you remember, he said, F your freedom.
And not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
When he was trying to encourage people
to
get back. So I was really pissed at him then. And I remember that morning when we were playing the video, I was like, I don't even want to do this, but I have to call it honestly. So I'm very glad to see that he's out there and making sense again. And that's great. And you're right, Jillian, if California only had him as a governor again, things would be at least somewhat different. It's still a wacky state.
Agreed.
But the main point here, I think, Jillian, is what you said at the end there, which is that everything they do is to protect democracy. And in an extended version of that clip, Arnold also says, the government, anytime the government says something is temporary, it's really permanent. Right. So right now, Newsom's trying to sell it like, oh, we'll temporarily do this while we sort of see how everything shakes out. But congratulations, you don't have to be a wizard to realize once they get some more seats, they're not going to suddenly have a bipartisan commission to look at the maps again and make it fair. Right. So it is what it is when it comes to communist California.
That they pretend it's temporary with intentions of making it permanent. I was looking into this whole ACA, COVID, Obama era benefits that were put in, obviously, during COVID that the Democrats set to sunset in 2025. And now they're fighting over it and they want them to be extended. And I was trying to figure out, I'm like, well, wait a second. You guys are the ones that made it temporary. Byron Donalds explained that to me. Why didn't you make it permanent then if this is what you really wanted? And it turns out because it would have cost so much money, it violates even their own spending rules. So it's like, we'll just make it temporary, but then we'll fight for it to be permanent every time it comes up, and we'll just shut the government down as leverage, which is just insane. It's such a manipulation.
Drew, you got anything else on that?
No, not on that topic, except that I'm stuck in the great state of California, and it's just it's sinking, it's going down. It's not getting.
Well, you give it
one bright spot there. It's not good.
Well, then I hate to do this segment, but since it's my turn, I'm really going to stick it to you right now because Newsom is going to run for governor. For governor.
President.
He's going to run. I am tired. He's running for president. Thank you, Jillian. I'm not above a correction, especially live. He's obviously running for president. His inability to say anything remotely true or show any empathy about any of the things he's done wrong is absolutely incredible. You guys know that. But let me show you this clip where he's on Elex Michaelson, who you guys probably know from LA. He has a new show on CNN now. Elex is actually a decent guy. I'm shocked
forget, I had a show every night with him during COVID for a year. It's
Oh, wow.
6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. I can't remember now. Every night, he and I did an update show on Fox 11 here in Los Angeles, updating what the information was coming in on COVID.
Oh,
Maybe
wow. Well, he's, I've done his show many times. He's a decent guy. He's definitely, I would say a left-leaning-ish, but he's absolutely decent guy. So miraculously, he now has a show on CNN. Anyway, he brings on Newsom, and they started talking about the podcasting world, particularly Joe Rogan. I thought this was interesting.
He won't, look, he hasn't, for years and years, he's been attacking me, and it's one way, and he won't have me on. He's consistently not having me on. By the way, I'm moving on. I have no interest.
You're done with him?
Joe Rogan's the Facebook of podcasting. He was sitting across one of the brightest minds in podcasting right now. The guy was in the mic. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people at the mic doing extraordinary things in podcasting.
Joe Rogan's got a pretty big audience still, though.
You know what? But with all due respect, if he has a big audience but he doesn't have big enough confidence, I didn't go there, to have me on.
Well, you've called him a chicken.
But he's been attacking for... here's the thing. These guys, they all have something in common. It's one way. They attack, they belittle, they demean, they take things out of context. But this is a serious thing.
Yeah.
And so often we just sit back and go, oh, God, I really would love to go on. Oh, if Kamala Harris just went on Joe Rogan, she would have won. It's not. It's so much deeper than that. And the unwillingness for a guy like that to even have the common courtesy to attack someone and not have the decency to say, you know what, why don't you have a chance to come on? Let's have a civil dialogue. I've watched you on podcasts with like Sean Ryan, who's a close buddy of his. He had the courage on me have 4 hours.
Right.
Sean Hannity, folks like that. And so if I can go on Sean Ryan and Sean Hannity, what are you worried about? Joe, you're going to cook me.
So guys, one of the things that I love about doing this show is that I can see both of you and you can see me while we play the clips. And the visceral reaction we all have to Newsom, even before he says anything, to watch both of you tense up. And then, of course, almost everything he said there was pure projection or complete fabrication or reversal of the truth. I mean, the idea that Joe Rogan, he only does these shows to belittle people or whatever the rest of that diatribe was, is complete nonsense. Joe Rogan, who, people can have whatever their issues are with him, but the guy is an extremely, I would say, ridiculously fair interviewer who, if anything, gets into trouble for not knowing enough about some of the topics that he's covering. That might be a fair criticism that you could lay on me or anyone else. But the idea that his show is like about belittling people or making fun of people. And also Gavin seems to be a little confused. When you're the governor, well, then podcasters or commentators or whatever we are going to criticize you. And it's incumbent upon you to go in and talk to the people who criticize you. Donald Trump has been interviewed by every single person who once called him a Nazi or a racist or a bigot or blah, 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 blah. So at the end there, where he's basically like, I'm not even going to do it now. It's like, okay, good luck with that, because guess what, Gav? Kamala didn't do it, and she damn well should have. Now, the reason she didn't do it was because everyone knew she couldn't sit with anyone for 3 hours. I mean, she couldn't have done it with the three of us. That's not even really about Rogan specifically, but everyone knew that. And oh my God,
every podcast now,
big pussy right across the screen, Jillian.
I struggle immensely with him because it's personal, because he destroyed home. I have actively watched it. It is not a partisan thing for me at all. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. I don't know that there are liberals out there bashing this guy, like far left liberals. James Lee is bashing this guy. Famously, Anna Kasparian has come out of the woke bubble to bash this guy. Like, he sucks, because what do all of the people I just listed have in common? They have suffered under his reign of California. And I'm just wondering if you saw him this week talking about trying to relate to people of color by talking about Wonder Bread.
Yeah.
Kind of raising myself, turning on the TV, started, just getting obsessed, sitting there with the Wonder Bread and 5 stacks of,
it's like the White Stack 5 story.
Yeah.
I thought, like, that is the most, like, he's clearly manipulating and like trying to pretend like, oh, I was poor and I get the struggle, man, and I relate. But bringing up Wonder Bread, like, I can't believe
and mac and cheese, that he was so poor. Everyone loves mac and cheese.
Fried chicken, I almost vomited everywhere. It's so inherently racist to even try that narrative on them and manipulate people of color. But not only that, he's a rich kid. His dad was an attorney and a judge who worked for the Gettys. There's photos of this douche in high school. I'm sorry. I promised myself I would not name call because it's should be beneath all of us. But in like a Burberry scarf, like in a suit, I cannot, Dave.
If I could just make here,
Guys?
Jillian,
Okay.
Drew is the doctor here, but I want to give what I think could be considered a piece of medical advice because I was having the same, when I was doing Rubin Report this morning, I was having the same sort of thing with him, which is I want to say all these bad things. It can be kind of boring to do it over and over. And what I said on the show is I don't want to have hatred in my heart, right? I don't want that.
I know, Dave.
But I really have such a visceral reaction to him. So what I've realized, and this works for me, maybe Drew can explain why perhaps medically it may not be the best thing. But what I've decided to do is, remember Al Gore had a lockbox? Remember Al Gore's lockbox 30 years ago for Social Security? Yeah, he had this famous thing. It was, I'm not going to touch Social Security. It'll be in a lockbox.
Okay.
Well, I have created a little lockbox in my heart that no other piece of my heart will be touched by it. And that's where I just hold my little hatred for Gavin Newsom. And occasionally, if someone else does something insane, Mamdani, one of these lunatics, AOC, I can let Gav out for a moment, and then that person comes in. But Drew, is that a sensible medical thing to do? To have just because it's a teeny,
it's so
tiny.
Hard. It is so hard. Doc, what do we do?
I think when it comes to overwhelming emotions, compartmentalization can sometimes. But I have two reactions to this. One, let's get him in here. You were belittling him. Like, come on in, let's talk. I'm happy to talk to my friend Elex. Let's talk. Number one. And number two, there's this crazy perception on the behalf of Newsom et al. That somehow podcasting was a premeditated attack on the left, that an army of talented broadcasters got together and carried out together. Every single podcaster he mentioned took it, literally spent some period of time where they were holding up their phone doing an Instagram Live or something, and it just built their audiences organically. Every one of them, including Joe. And they don't understand that.
And by the way, look at the three of us. We were all Californians. Drew, you still are, but the three of us were all Californians, and we were all lefties. And look what basically a guy like him can do. So he's pissed at us for exposing what has happened to California and apparently for being podcasters. But Drew, I'm totally with you. Yes, he would be absolutely welcome. And I would treat him, by the way, as frustrated as I am with him and all the things I've said about him over the years, if I ever sat down with him, I would treat him the exact same way I would treat any guest without reservations.
Of course. And just as speaking of being liberal or on the left, in a couple of days, I am interviewing Larry Elder. And
good.
In addition to making amends and asking for forgiveness for things I got wrong, I want to just fall at the foot of Larry Elder and express my appreciation for creating Dave Rubin.
It's all on video. Black conservative destroys white libtard, and then Dave Rubin was born. Guys, I think we're gonna leave it there because I'm starting to see colors. I'm at that level of jet lag now. Like when the battery on your computer's dying, and then you just see glitches across the screen. My actual brain is starting to break down right now. So.